Chapter 1. The Quiet Cage of Our Own Making. Dostoevsky's Whisper on the Price of Unfreedom. Have you ever felt it? That heavy, silent truth that settles in the quiet moments just before sleep. That feeling of being trapped, not by walls or chains, but by something far more subtle and insidious. It's the fear that maybe, just maybe, we are not as free as we believe ourselves to be. What if our most cherished choices, the ones that define us, were never truly ours to begin with? What if the peace we crave is just a gilded cage, and we, the willing prisoners? This isn't a story of grand battles or epic escapes, but a quiet, secret history of the human soul. A history that Dostoevsky, in his most profound moments of darkness, believed we were all living. And a truth that, once you hear it, you can't unhear. It's a whisper in the dark about the one thing we all possess, yet so often give away without even realizing it. The sacred, terrifying, and beautiful burden of our own moral freedom. Imagine a small, forgotten room. The air is still and heavy, and the only light comes from a single flickering candle on a rough wooden table. In this room sits a man. His name doesn't matter, because he could be anyone. He could be you. He's not shackled, not imprisoned in the way we understand it. He's free to stand, to walk, to leave. But he doesn't. He sits there, day after day, in a kind of self-imposed twilight. The door is unlocked, but to him it feels like it's sealed with some invisible, unbreakable force. This is the quiet cage Dostoevsky wrote about, the one we all have the potential to build for ourselves. It's not a physical place, but a state of mind, a subtle surrender of our deepest, most human power. Dostoevsky understood something profound and terrifying about us. He saw that we often choose the comfort of certainty over the terrifying, glorious chaos of true freedom. It's a trade we make without even realizing we're at the negotiation table. We trade the terrifying unknown for a familiar, predictable pain. We trade the heavy weight of our own choices for the comforting lie of determinism, of, that's just the way things are. This is the core of Dostoevsky's dark philosophy on human nature. We are often our own worst jailers. We crave a master, a rule book, a pre-written script, because the terrifying silence of absolute freedom is too loud for our souls to bear. We would rather be a character in a bad play than the lonely, terrifying author of our own lives. Think of it this way. A man with 1,000 paths before him, each leading to a different destiny, a different version of himself. The dizzying possibilities are a kind of torment, so he chooses a path that has already been cleared, a well-worn road paved by others. He walks along it, feeling a certain sense of safety, a quiet pride that he is part of something larger. But with every step, a little piece of him fades. His unique song becomes a quiet hum in a vast chorus. His potential to truly create, to truly be, diminishes. He has traded his sovereign power for a membership card. Dostoevsky would look at this man not with scorn, but with a deep, sorrowful understanding. He would see not a weak man, but a man who has made the most tragic choice of all, to surrender his moral freedom for a cheap imitation of peace. And where does this surrender begin? In the small things, in the countless decisions we make every day, where we choose to follow the crowd, to parrot the popular opinion, to silence the small, rebellious voice inside us that whispers, "What if there's another way?" It's in the quiet compromise of our values, to fit in, to avoid conflict, to be liked. Each of these small surrenders is a tiny brick in the wall of our quiet cage, and before long, We look around and wonder why the world feels so small, so predictable, so devoid of real wonder. We start to blame external forces, the world, other people. But the real chains are the ones we forged ourselves, one quiet, convenient choice at a time. Dostoevsky's work is not a prescription, but a mirror. He holds it up to our faces and forces us to look at the man in the small, forgotten room. He asks us, gently but relentlessly, if we are truly the captains of our own souls. He asks us if we have the courage to stand in the terrifying, beautiful light of our own freedom, or if we would rather retreat into the comfortable, suffocating darkness of a life lived by someone else's rules. The reward for this courage is not a tangible prize, but something far more valuable, the profound peace of a soul that knows it is its own master. The quiet inner stillness that comes from a life lived on your own terms, with all its triumphs and all its failures, knowing that every choice, good or bad, was truly, authentically, irrevocably your own. This is the sacred journey Dostoevsky invites us to take, a journey not into the world, but into the quiet, forgotten room within ourselves, a journey to unlock a door we forgot was ever locked. Chapter 2. The Unbearable Weight of Pity, Dostoevsky's Heresy on Forgiveness. Have you ever been on the receiving end of a gaze so full of pity, it felt like a physical weight, pressing down on your chest? That feeling of being seen not as a person, but as a project, a problem to be fixed, or a tragic figure to be saved? What if the most compassionate gesture isn't always the kindest? Dostoevsky looked into the darkest corners of the human heart and found a stunning, almost heretical, truth about forgiveness and pity. He discovered that sometimes the greatest act of love isn't to forgive, but to demand justice. The kind of justice that respects a person's ability to bear the full, terrible weight of their own actions. This isn't a story about cruelty, but about a more profound, more demanding form of compassion. It's a truth that could change how you see every act of forgiveness, every act of grace, and every moment of profound human connection. Imagine a different kind of room. This one is full of people, their faces illuminated by the warm, forgiving glow of a fireplace. They are gathered around a man who has done something terrible. The details are not important. What matters is the quiet, collective hum of their compassion. They speak in soft tones, their eyes full of a gentle, overwhelming pity. They tell him he is forgiven, that his sins are washed away. They tell him that his actions were the result of circumstance, of his past, of a broken world. They want to absolve him, to lift the burden from his shoulders. They believe they are doing a good, holy thing. And the man, surrounded by this sea of grace, feels nothing. He feels an emptiness, a profound coldness in his soul. The pity feels like an insult, the forgiveness, a lie. He wants to feel the weight of what he has done, to truly bear the consequences, to earn his own redemption. But they won't let him. They have robbed him of the one thing that could truly set him free, the terrible, beautiful burden of his own guilt. Dostoevsky would look at this scene with a quiet, furious intensity. He would see not a moment of grace, but a moment of profound spiritual robbery. He understood that true moral freedom is a two-sided coin. On one side is the freedom to choose, to act. On the other side is the absolute, non-negotiable responsibility for those choices. To deny someone the weight of their own guilt, to forgive them before they have truly accepted their own responsibility, is to deny their humanity. It is to treat them as a child or a beast, incapable of real moral agency. It's to say, in the quietest of whispers, you were not truly free to choose, and therefore you do not have to truly suffer the consequences. This is the unbearable weight of pity. It feels like compassion, but it is, in Dostoevsky's eyes, a kind of subtle spiritual violence. He believed that suffering was not a punishment to be avoided, but a sacred path to redemption. It was in the crucible of suffering that the human soul was forged. To deny someone that journey, to try and lift the cross from their shoulders with a quick and easy absolution, is to deny them the opportunity to grow, to transform, to truly earn their own peace. A true act of compassion, in Dostoevsky's world, is to stand with someone as they bear the full, terrible weight of their own actions. To not shy away from their suffering, but to respect it. To see it as a necessary part of their journey towards self-discovery and redemption. It is to say, I see what you have done. I see the pain you have caused, and I respect you enough to believe you can bear the consequences. I am here with you, but I will not carry this for you. This is a much more demanding and ultimately more profound kind of love. It is the love of a parent who lets their child fall, knowing that the scraped knee is a necessary lesson. It is the love of a friend who speaks a hard truth, knowing that the temporary pain is a path to a more authentic self. This is the heart of Dostoevsky's heresy on forgiveness. He asks us to question our own motives for offering easy absolution. Is it for the other person's sake, or is it for our own comfort, to avoid the messy, difficult work of true reckoning? He believed that in our rush to be kind, we often forget to be respectful. Respect for another person's moral struggle, respect for their capacity to bear their own suffering, and respect for their ultimate power to choose their own path, even when that path is paved with pain. So as you drift to sleep tonight, think about the quiet, heavy weight of pity. Think about the people in your life you may have sought to save with easy forgiveness. Dostoevsky would challenge you to see them not as victims, but as sovereign beings, capable of bearing the full, terrible glory of their own moral agency. He would ask you to consider the possibility that the kindest thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable, to respect their struggle, and to trust that in the fires of their own suffering, they might just find a more profound, more authentic redemption than you could ever offer them. The burden of our own choices, the true meaning of compassion, these are not just abstract ideas. They are the very fabric of our soul's quiet struggle. But what is the root of this struggle? Where does the impulse to rebel, to defy, to scream into the void come from? What ancient, terrifying need drives us to destroy the very things we claim to love? Our next story ventures into the heart of this mystery, to a place where reason goes to die, and the most forbidden truth of human nature is revealed. Chapter 3. The Secret Joy of a Self-Inflicted Wound. Dostoevsky on the sweetness of spite. Have you ever been so angry, so hurt, so desperate for some kind of release, that you've done something that you knew would only hurt you more? Something that made no logical sense. Something that felt like a quiet, forbidden pleasure in its self-destructive purity. What if there's a part of us that doesn't want to be happy, that doesn't want to be reasonable, that doesn't want to be good? What if the most profound act of human freedom is not to choose the path of light, but to choose the path of darkness, simply because we can? Dostoevsky dared to look into the abyss of the human heart and found a terrifying, almost beautiful truth. The secret joy of a self-inflicted wound. A truth that, once you understand it, makes the most irrational, self-sabotaging human behaviors suddenly, chillingly, make perfect sense. Imagine a man sitting alone in a room, a different room now. This one is dusty and filled with the ghosts of forgotten books. The world outside is a symphony of reason and order. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and a distant clock chimes the hour with perfect mechanical precision. The world wants this man to be happy. It has provided him with a simple, clear path to contentment. All he has to do is follow the rules, be a good citizen, and accept the gentle, predictable rewards of a well-ordered life. But the man feels a low, simmering resentment, a quiet, rebellious fury that has no name. He doesn't want to be a cog in a machine. He doesn't want to be a predictable, happy little automaton. So he does something small, something utterly pointless, something that will only hurt him. He lights a small fire on the corner of his favorite book. He watches the pages curl and blacken, the words disappearing into ash. He feels a strange, profound sweetness in the act, a secret joy, a moment of pure, unadulterated spite. This is the core of Dostoevsky's exploration of the underground man, a character who lives in the dark, forgotten corners of the human psyche. He is the part of us that rebels against the tyranny of logic, the dictatorship of happiness, and the oppressive weight of being told what is good for us. The underground man would argue that to be truly human, to be truly free, is to have the capacity to choose something that is irrational, destructive, even evil, simply because it is our choice. The self-inflicted wound is not an accident. It is an act of defiance. It is a scream into the void, a declaration that I am not a piano key that can be played by the laws of nature. I am not a predictable animal driven by the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. I am a free, choosing being, and I will prove it by choosing to hurt myself. Dostoevsky understood that the most dangerous and most sacred aspect of our moral freedom is this capacity for radical, self-destructive defiance. He saw that we are not just creatures of reason and self-interest. We are also creatures of paradox, of mystery, of a profound, almost divine capacity for unreason. We are capable of loving our own suffering, of finding a strange comfort in our own pain, of clinging to a grievance as if it were a precious jewel. The spite is not the end goal. It is the proof of our freedom. It is the moment we feel the exhilarating, terrifying power of our own will, a will that can triumph even over our own well-being. Think of the person who stays in a bad relationship long after it has ceased to be good for them. Think of the person who sabotages their own success on the cusp of a major breakthrough. Think of the person who holds a grudge that has long since turned to dust, nursing it in the quiet darkness of their soul. Dostoevsky would see in all of these acts not a pathology, but a profound, albeit twisted affirmation of human freedom. He would see a soul fighting back against the world's gentle, suffocating pressure to be better, to be happy, to be reasonable. He would see a person who, in their own dark way, is choosing their own path, however destructive, over a path that was chosen for them. This is a difficult, almost forbidden truth to grapple with. It asks us to look at the darker parts of ourselves not with judgment, but with a kind of profound, sorrowful understanding. It asks us to recognize the secret joy of our own self-inflicted wounds and to see them for what they are: a desperate, beautiful, and terrifying affirmation of our most sacred possession, our moral freedom. It is a reminder that the path to redemption is not always a straight line, and that sometimes the most profound spiritual journeys begin not in the light, but in the dark, irrational, and deeply human act of defiance. But what happens when this defiant spirit isn't turned inward, but outward? What happens when our need for radical freedom collides with the world, with other people, with the very idea of God? The next story takes us to the ultimate battleground of Dostoevsky's philosophy, to the chilling, breathtaking question that haunts all his work and every human soul that has ever dared to think for themselves. Chapter 4, The Underground Whisperer. Why we sometimes choose our own cages. Listen closely. Beneath the hum of your daily thoughts, beneath the to-do lists and the fleeting worries, there's a quieter voice, a murmur. It doesn't speak in grand pronouncements. It speaks in sighs, in resentments, in small acts of self-sabotage. Dostoevsky called it the voice of the underground. It's the part of us that, presented with sunlight, sometimes chooses the damp, familiar comfort of the cellar. The part that, offered freedom, might just bang its head against the wall. Deliberately, perversely. Why? Why would a soul, gifted with wings, sometimes choose the weight of chains? What secret, unsettling reward do we find in our own confinement? And what precious key might we be overlooking, rusting quietly in the corner of our own self-made prison? Imagine a small, clever mouse. It lives in a maze. The maze has walls, dead ends, confusing paths. But the mouse knows this maze. It knows where the crumbs usually fall, where the shadows offer safety, where the small dangers lie. One day, a wall vanishes. A new corridor opens, leading towards a vast, unknown space filled with light and the scent of something different. Freedom, possibility. The mouse creeps to the edge, sniffs the unfamiliar air, feels a tremor of fear. Then, it turns back. It scurries down a familiar narrow tunnel, back to its known corner. It might even, in a fit of strange defiance, gnaw pointlessly on a piece of wood it can never move. This, Dostoevsky tells us, is the human heart in miniature. We are that mouse. The underground man is our archetype, raging against the very idea of a perfectly rational, predictable utopia. What if I choose not to act in my own best interest? He sneers. What if I choose the toothache just to prove I am not a piano key? The cage he chooses isn't always physical. It's the cage of resentment, of spite, of intellectual isolation, of self-imposed victimhood. It's the cage of rigid ideology, or paralyzing self-doubt, or the comfortable numbness of routine. Why choose it? Because within the cage, however miserable, we are in control. We define the terms of our suffering. We become the tragic hero of our own small, dark story. The vastness beyond the bars. It's terrifying. It demands responsibility. It offers no guarantees. It requires us to face the terrifying gift of freedom we explored earlier. The underground man would rather be certain of his misery than risk the dizzying uncertainty of genuine hope or action. His spite is his armor. His self-imposed isolation is his fortress. It's perverse, illogical, and utterly human. Dostoevsky doesn't condemn this impulse. He exposes it. He shows us the perverse comfort of the known pain. The key to the cage isn't forced upon us. It's recognition. It's looking at our own resentments, our petty acts of self-sabotage, our retreats into familiar misery, and asking the underground man's question from the other side, why am I gnawing on this wood? What fear is the cage protecting me from? Is it the fear of failure? The fear of the vast responsibility of freedom? The fear of being truly seen and perhaps found wanting? The fear of the pain required for transformation? The key is self-awareness without self-loathing. It's seeing the cage, acknowledging its perverse comfort, and then gently testing the door, not demanding a grand escape, but perhaps just allowing a crack of that unfamiliar light to fall in. The key isn't reason alone. The underground man despises reason. It's not forced optimism. It's often a spark of connection, a moment of unexpected kindness that pierces the self-absorption, like Liza's tears breaking through the underground man's spite, however briefly. It's the terrifying, vulnerable act of reaching out, even just a little, beyond the self-constructed walls. It's choosing, in one small moment, to act despite the fear, despite the certainty of potential pain, simply because it feels human. To step away from the wall we've been banging our head against, not because the new path is guaranteed to be better, but because the act of stepping away is, in itself, an assertion of that terrifying freedom. The cage door was never locked from the outside. The lock was always our own fear, turned inward. Tonight, as you drift, listen for the underground whisper. Don't judge it. Just acknowledge its presence. Then, feel the weight of the key, warm in your own hand. The cage door is heavy, but it only opens from within. You only need to turn the key. One stubborn, courageous click at a time. And if we do turn that key, if we step blinking into the uncertain light beyond our self-made walls, what then? How do we navigate the vastness, not alone in our freedom, but face to face with the terrifying, luminous mystery of another soul? Chapter 5. When love is a razor's edge, the frightening, necessary truth about seeing souls. We speak of love as a harbor, a warm embrace, a safe haven. But what if the deepest love is also the most dangerous? What if truly seeing another soul, not the curated version, not the mask, but the raw, trembling, contradictory essence beneath, requires walking a razor's edge? Dostoevsky's greatest characters don't love safely. They love like open wounds. Prince Mishkin in The Idiot, with his devastating childlike clarity, sees too much. He sees the beauty and the rot, the saintly potential and the seething envy, the desperate love and the capacity for cruelty, all intertwined in the same heart. And it shatters him. What if this terrifying clarity, this refusal to look away from the complex, often dark truth of another, is the only love strong enough to hold the weight of real human connection? What armor are we missing if we settle for the comfortable lie, the curated facade? And what impossible, radiant peace might bloom when we dare to see and be seen in our entirety, shadows and all? Picture two figures standing not face to face but soul to soul, not separated by polite distance or curated personas, but utterly exposed. Imagine the light between them isn't soft and forgiving, but searingly bright, illuminating every scar, every hidden fear, every unspoken shame, every flicker of darkness alongside every spark of light. This isn't comfortable. This is terrifying. It's like standing naked under a desert sun. Dostoevsky understood that genuine love isn't blind. It's painfully, devastatingly sighted. Prince Mishkin, the idiot, possesses this sight. He looks at the proud, beautiful Nastasia Filipovna and sees not just her radiance, but the terrified, abused child screaming beneath. He looks at the cynical Rogozhin and sees not just his violent passion, but the profound, almost religious intensity of his longing. He doesn't judge, he sees. And his seeing is an unbearable gift and a burden. This love is a razor's edge because it demands everything. It demands we relinquish the comforting illusions we project onto others, the illusions that make them manageable, predictable, safe for our own fragile egos. To see someone's darkness is to acknowledge its presence, its power. It risks being consumed by it. Like Rogojin's love for Nastasia turns destructive. It risks being shattered by the unbearable weight of their pain. Like Mishkin is broken by the conflicting needs and anguishes around him. It risks revealing our own darkness, reflected back in their eyes. Dostoevsky shows us characters who crave this depth. Nastasia desperately seeking someone who sees her true, ruined self and doesn't flinch, yet are destroyed by it when it arrives. Why? Because being truly seen is as terrifying as truly seeing. It strips away every defense. So why walk this edge? Because the alternative, Dostoevsky whispers, is a deeper hell, isolation. The comfortable love, the curated connection, is ultimately a lie. It builds a bridge over the chasm, not across it. We remain fundamentally alone, playing roles for each other. The peace offered by this terrifying love isn't the absence of conflict or pain. It's the profound peace of being known, wholly, unconditionally, not approved of in every aspect, but seen. It's the peace that comes when the exhausting work of hiding is over, when the mask cracks, and beneath it, not a monster, but another complex, suffering, luminous human being is revealed. It's the peace Alyosha offers through his silent, compassionate presence. Not fixing, not judging, just being with the suffering soul in its entirety. This love isn't about romantic happily ever afters. Mishkin's story ends in breakdown, Rogojin's in murder, Nastasia's in tragedy. Dostoevsky is brutally honest. Walking this razor's edge can lead to destruction, but he also shows us the moments of unbearable beauty that only exist on that edge. The moment of raw honesty, the shared understanding that needs no words, the profound connection forged in mutual vulnerability. It's the love that says, I see your darkness, and it does not eclipse your light for me. I see your fragility, and it does not diminish your strength. I see you, all of you. This is the love that demands courage, not comfort. It's the only love, Dostoevsky suggests, that can truly bridge the terrifying solitude of the human condition. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine lowering your own mask, just for a moment, not for the world, but for yourself. Feel the vulnerability. Then imagine extending that seeing, that acceptance, toward another soul, not as a demand, but as a quiet, courageous offering. The razor's edge is sharp, the fall is possible, but the view from that edge, it encompasses the entire heartbreaking, magnificent truth of what it means to be human, together. That is the frightening, necessary peace. That is the love worth the risk. Rest now. You are seen. Chapter 6. The Dark Mirror. We all avoid Dostoevsky's secret on the self. We lie to have you ever felt a whisper in the back of your mind, a quiet voice that knows all your little secrets and small hypocrisies, the kind of voice you push away just before you fall asleep. Imagine for a moment a different kind of darkness, not the absence of light, but a kind of deep internal shadow where our truest self hides. Dostoevsky knew this darkness. He believed that within each of us there is a hidden chamber, a dusty, forgotten room where we store all the truths we refuse to admit, the little lies we tell ourselves to make it through the day, the justifications we cling to, the masks we wear for the world, and even for ourselves. What if I told you that in that dark room lies not just shame, but also a fierce, untamed freedom, a kind of power that remains locked away until you dare to open that door? What peace could we gain if we simply looked into that mirror, even for a moment, and saw what was really there? In this quiet hour, let's step into that chamber. It's not a place of judgment. but a place of profound honesty. We're not seeking to punish ourselves, but to understand the intricate, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying creature that we are. Think of the man from Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. He is a man who lives in this chamber, but he has chosen to never leave. He is a man of fierce intelligence, but he uses it to dissect his own misery, to prove to himself and to the world that he is a creature of pure, unadulterated spite. He knows he is miserable, but he also feels a strange, defiant joy in that misery. He believes that to be truly free, he must choose his own suffering, his own humiliation. He would rather be the architect of his own downfall than a cog in someone else's machine. He sees a world of people who pretend to be good, who follow predictable paths and feel predictable emotions. And he scorns them, not because he is evil, but because he sees their predictable happiness as a kind of slavery. He sees their goodness as a performance, a way to escape the terrifying burden of their own freedom. This man, the underground man, is a radical. He believes that the most precious thing we have is our ability to choose, even if that choice is to do something irrational, something stupid, something self-destructive. He would argue that we are all, in some small way, living underground. We all have that part of us that resists being told what to do, what to feel, what to believe. It's the part of you that rebels against the easy answers, the part that secretly enjoys a bit of chaos, a little bit of trouble. We build these little underground bunkers for our souls, where we can be our raw, unvarnished selves, away from the expectations of the world. And in that space, we are truly free. But what happens when we never leave that bunker? What happens when we become so comfortable in our little rebellion that we forget how to live in the light? We become a prisoner of our own freedom. We build a cage, and then convince ourselves it's a castle. The underground man is a warning, a dark reflection of our own potential for self-deception. He is a testament to the idea that true freedom is not the absence of restraint, but the conscious choice to be a certain kind of person, even in the face of immense difficulty. It's about looking at your reflection in the dark mirror and saying, "Yes, that's me. That's the part of me that is scared, that is selfish, that is weak. And I'm not going to pretend it's not there." This isn't about wallowing in our flaws. It's about a radical acceptance that allows us to move forward, not by ignoring our shadow self, but by understanding it, by integrating it into the whole. Without this understanding, we are constantly fighting a war within ourselves, a battle against a phantom enemy that is, in fact, our own reflection. Think of it this way. Our society often tells us to be happy, to be successful, to be good. And there is nothing wrong with those things. But Dostoevsky would ask, at what cost? Are we pursuing a happiness that is truly our own, or one that has been handed to us? Are we striving for a success that is meaningful to us, or one that society has defined? Are we being good because we have genuinely chosen goodness, or because we are terrified of the alternative? This is the core of the dilemma. We are so afraid of the wrong answer that we are afraid to ask the question. And so, we live in a world of predictable happiness, of comfortable lies. We trade our true freedom for a kind of spiritual security. We put on a mask and then forget we're wearing it. The secret that Dostoevsky reveals is that we must not be afraid to look into that dark mirror. We must not be afraid of the self that we might find there, the self that is capable of great cruelty, but also of immense love, the self that is selfish, but also capable of profound sacrifice, the self that is lazy, but also capable of incredible effort. The truth is, we are all of these things, all at once. And in the embrace of this truth lies a profound and quiet peace. The peace of no longer having to pretend. The peace of no longer having to fight the battle against our own reflection. It's the peace of knowing that you are a complex, flawed, beautiful, and utterly unique creature. A creature that is not defined by its mistakes, but by its capacity for change, for redemption, for love. This is the freedom that Dostoevsky offers. Not a freedom from responsibility, but a freedom to take full responsibility for our own souls. It's the terrifying but exhilarating freedom to say, I am the one who must answer for my life. Not to a judge, not to a God, not to society, but to myself. And in that quiet moment of self-reflection, we can begin to build something real, something true, something that can withstand the darkness. We can begin to build a life that is not just a performance, but a genuine expression of our deepest selves. A life lived not from fear, but from a place of profound, undeniable truth. And that, my friend, is a truth worth seeking, even in the quiet of this night. Chapter 7. The Terrible Gift. You already hold why freedom feels like falling. Imagine just for a moment that the heaviest burden you carry is also the most precious thing you own. It's not your worries, not your past, not the expectations pressing down. It's something woven into the very fabric of your being, a gift so immense it can feel terrifying. It's your freedom, your absolute, undeniable, terrifying freedom to choose. Fyodor Dostoevsky peered into the darkest corners of the human soul and saw this truth blazing like a single candle in an infinite void. We are condemned to be free. Condemned. Not blessed, not simply given, but condemned. And that, my friend, is the quiet earthquake trembling beneath every decision you make, every doubt that keeps you awake, even the ones you haven't named yet. What if ignoring this truth leaves us stumbling through life like sleepwalkers, never truly awake to our own power or our peril? What peace might we find if we dared to truly hold this terrible, beautiful gift? Picture a vast, starless sky, not empty, but profoundly dark. Now imagine you are suspended in it. No up, no down, no walls, no floor, no ceiling, just space. Infinite possibility. It should feel liberating, shouldn't it? Like soaring. Yet for a heartbeat, doesn't a cold tendril of panic brush your spine? Where do you go? How do you move? What anchors you? This, whispered Dostoevsky through the tormented voice of his underground man, is the dizzying vertigo of true moral freedom. It's not the freedom from something, chains, oppression, rules. It's the freedom for something. The freedom to define yourself moment by moment, choice by choice, against the silent backdrop of eternity. And it's terrifying, utterly terrifying. We crave the walls. We invent the walls. We build them from habit, from religion, from social norms, from carefully constructed identities. We build them from the comfortable lies we tell ourselves about who we are and what we must do. We build them so high we forget the sky was ever there. We call this security. We call it sanity. Dostoevsky called it a cage of our own making. He understood the perverse comfort of the cage. Inside, we know the rules. Inside, the responsibility feels lighter. We can blame the walls, the warden, the design of the cage itself for our unhappiness, our stunted lives. Look, we sigh, if only the bars weren't there, then I could fly. But the terrible, liberating secret is, the bars are only ever made of fear. Fear of that starless sky, fear of falling, fear of the immense echoing responsibility of being the sole author of our own meaning. Think of a choice you made today, small perhaps, what to eat, what to say, what thought to linger on. Now imagine tracing the thread of that choice back. Who forced you? Truly? Not society, not expectation, not even hunger, not really. Beneath the layers of conditioning, of impulse, of external pressure, there was a moment, however fleeting, however clouded, where you decided. You chose that path through the infinite dark. That is the weight. That is the gift. The underground man rages against the mathematicians, against the utopians who would map out the perfect life, reducing choice to a predictable equation. He would rather be irrational. He would rather bang his head against the wall. Why? Because even self-destruction in that moment is a defiant assertion of his terrifying freedom. It's proof he exists, that he is more than a piano key playing a predetermined note. So, what do we do when the ground disappears? When the walls we built crumble through loss, through crisis, through a sudden piercing moment of self-awareness, we feel the fall, the panic, the vertigo. Dostoevsky doesn't offer a net. He offers a truth. This falling is the feeling of being alive, truly alive, not sleepwalking in the cage, but awake in the vastness. The peace comes not from finding solid ground, but from understanding that the falling is the flight. It comes from accepting the terrible gift. It means looking into the void and knowing the only handhold is your own capacity to choose, again and again. To choose kindness even when it costs. To choose truth even when it burns. To choose love even when it risks shattering you. To build meaning, brick by fragile brick, not from the stones of imposed walls, but from the stardust of your own free will. It's exhausting. It's exhilarating. It's the only way to stop being a ghost haunting your own life. Tonight, as you drift, feel the space around you. Not as emptiness, but as possibility. The terrible, beautiful gift is already in your hands. You were born falling. Now, breathe and feel the air rush past. That's the sound of your freedom. And as you begin to settle, carrying that weightless weight of freedom, another question might brush against the edge of your thoughts. What happens when the very thing you thought anchored you in that vastness, the light you navigated by, begins to flicker and fade? What war erupts within when the ground and the stars seem to vanish? Chapter 8. The Saint Who Doubted God. What happens when your soul becomes a battlefield? Have you ever stood at the edge of a profound belief, a truth that once felt solid as bedrock beneath your feet, and felt it crumble? Not through anger, not through rebellion, but through a quiet, relentless erosion of doubt. A doubt that doesn't shout, but whispers in the sacred spaces of your heart. Dostoevsky knew this battlefield intimately. He didn't write about villains who rejected faith. He wrote about saints, tormented by the silence of God. Even Karamazov, the brilliant, tormented brother, wasn't an atheist out of spite, but out of a devastating, loving logic. "It is not God that I do not accept," he cries. "It is the world he has created." Imagine the sheer, heartbreaking weight of that statement. What if the deepest faith is forged not in certainty, but in the white-hot crucible of doubt? And what armor do we lack if we dismiss this inner war as weakness, rather than the ultimate agonizing expression of a soul grappling with the unbearable weight of existence? Think of a candle flame in a vast ancient cathedral. It throws light on the soaring arches, the stained glass, the faces bowed in prayer, It's a point of warmth, of focus, in the immense echoing silence. Now imagine a breath, not a gust to blow it out, but a gentle, persistent sigh that makes the flame tremble. It flickers, the shadows deepen, then retreat. The solid stone walls seem to shift in the unstable light. That trembling flame, that's the soul of someone like Ivan. He knows the light. He feels its warmth. He understands the beauty of the cathedral, the structure of its faith. But he also sees, with unbearable clarity, the suffering of a single, innocent child, the cruelty woven into the very fabric of creation. And that sigh of doubt, born of unbearable empathy, makes the entire edifice tremble. Dostoevsky didn't fear doubt. He feared the easy answers. He feared the comfort of those who never let the sigh touch their flame. Ivan's rebellion isn't against God. It's against a universe where divine harmony requires the unaccountable tears of children. His famous returning the ticket to paradise isn't defiance. It's a lover's broken-hearted protest. I refuse to be complicit, he whispers into the void. If this is the price of eternal harmony, the price is too high. His soul becomes the battlefield. Faith doesn't fight doubt with swords here. It bleeds alongside it. The anguish isn't intellectual. It's visceral, a raw wound, where love for God clashes with love for humanity in its most vulnerable suffering form. We often think of doubt as the enemy of faith. Dostoevsky shows us it can be its most agonizing, necessary expression. The Grand Inquisitor, that chilling figure who confronts Christ returned to earth, represents the opposite impulse, the crushing of doubt and freedom in the name of earthly comfort and security. Give them bread, not freedom, he declares. Give them certainty, not this terrifying burden of choice and doubt. Ivan's internal war is the terrifying counterpoint. He refuses the easy bread. He stares into the abyss of meaninglessness, holding on to his love for humanity, even as his belief in divine justice fractures. It's a devastating honesty. It's a spiritual courage that looks into the heart of darkness and refuses to look away, refuses to accept cheap comfort. Where is the peace in such torment? It doesn't lie in resolving the battle, Dostoevsky suggests. Alyosha, the brother who embodies active, compassionate love, doesn't defeat Ivan's arguments with logic. He kisses him. The peace, perhaps, lies in acknowledging the battlefield itself as sacred ground. It lies in understanding that the capacity for such profound doubt, such agonizing love for the suffering of the world, is itself a testament to the divine spark within. The trembling flame, though it flickers wildly, is still burning. It hasn't gone out. The war isn't a sign of lost faith, but of faith engaged in its most profound, terrifying struggle. It's the soul refusing to accept easy answers to unbearable questions. Tonight, if you feel a tremor in your own foundations, don't rush to rebuild the walls. Sit with the trembling. Feel the vastness it reveals. The battlefield is not your failure. It's the terrifying, beautiful landscape of a soul fully alive, wrestling with angels and demons, not in some mythical realm, but right here in the quiet chambers of your own heart. The candle still burns. That flickering light in the immense cathedral of existence is yours. Honor the fight. And from the ashes of that internal battlefield, from the raw nerve of suffering laid bare by Ivan's anguished love, a deeper question emerges. Can anything worthwhile, anything truly luminous, be born from such profound pain? What if suffering isn't just something to endure, but a dark, necessary soil? Chapter 9. Suffering's secret alchemy. Can pain truly forge a golden heart? There's a whisper, almost lost beneath the roar of our world, telling us to avoid pain at all costs. Suffering transforms. We medicate it, distract from it, pathologize it, flee from it. But deep down, in a place older than reason, we sense its strange, unsettling power. Dostoevsky, a man who stood before a firing squad, only to be reprieved at the last second, who endured years in a Siberian prison camp, didn't just understand suffering. He saw it as a terrifying, essential crucible for the human soul. He dared to suggest a forbidden truth, that the path to our deepest humanity, to genuine compassion, even to a flicker of redemption, might lead straight through the heart of pain, not around it. What if our relentless pursuit of comfort is secretly forging hearts of brittle glass, beautiful but easily shattered? And what unimagined strength, what quiet golden resilience might await if we stopped seeing the crucible as an enemy, but as the only forge hot enough to reshape us? Imagine a piece of cold, dark iron, hard, unyielding, useful only for blunt force. Now, thrust it into a searing fire. Watch it glow. First a dull red, then orange, then a blinding, almost white-hot yellow. It softens. It bends. It becomes malleable. The blacksmith doesn't do this to torture the iron. He does it to change it, to shape it into something new, something stronger, finer, more purposeful, a sword, a plowshare, a delicate hinge. Dostoevsky saw the human soul in that Siberian cold, that prison darkness, that searing fire of humiliation and despair. In his novel Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov isn't redeemed by his brilliant theory, nor by escaping punishment. He is broken apart by guilt, by isolation, by the crushing weight of his own deed. He descends into a feverish hell of his own making. Only then, in the utter ruin of his pride, his intellect, his very sense of self, does the ground become fertile for something new to grow. This isn't about glorifying pain. Dostoevsky knew its brutality, its capacity to crush and deform. Sonia, the prostitute who becomes Raskolnikov's unlikely guide, doesn't preach about the virtues of suffering. She simply lives it, bears it with a quiet dignity born not of masochism, but of an understanding forged in her own relentless fire. Her compassion isn't theoretical. It's scar tissue turned into tenderness. Her strength isn't brute force. It's the resilience of a blade tempered in unbearable heat. The alchemy Dostoevsky speaks of isn't magic. It's the brutal, necessary process by which the hard shell of the ego, our pride, our illusions of control, our cherished certainties, is cracked open. Like the iron in the fire, we must become soft, vulnerable, malleable. Only then can we be reshaped. What is forged in that fire? Not happiness necessarily, not ease, but something deeper, understanding. A visceral understanding of our own fragility, a shattering of the illusion that we are separate, superior, immune. Raskolnikov, through his suffering, finally sees Sonia, not as an idea, not as a social category, but as a soul as vast and wounded as his own. He feels the suffering of others, not as an abstract concept, but as a physical echo within his own broken being. This is the golden heart, compassion forged in shared vulnerability. It's a humility that knows the darkness within, and thus recognizes it in others without condemnation. It's a love that isn't earned, but recognized in the shared condition of brokenness. This transformation isn't guaranteed. The fire can destroy. It can leave us twisted and bitter, like Svidrigailov, who chooses oblivion. But Dostoevsky insists the potential is there. The alchemy is possible. Suffering, voluntarily shouldered, like Sonia's, or involuntarily endured, like the prisoners in Siberia, strips us down to the raw nerve of our existence. It asks the only question that matters in the end. Who will you become now that everything you thought you were has burned away? Will you let the ashes choke you? Or will you, like the phoenix of ancient myth, find the strength to rise, not unchanged but transformed? Your heart, tested in the fire, might just emerge less like cold iron, and more like something precious, something capable of bearing the unbearable weight of being human and offering warmth in the cold. Tonight, if you carry a weight, feel its heat, not as punishment, but as potential. The forge is hot. What might be shaped within you? And yet, what about those moments when the fire seems too much? When the burden feels impossible, and the only path seems to be retreat? What strange impulse drives us, sometimes, to choose the known pain of our cage over the terrifying freedom of the fire? Chapter 10. The Silent Scream of the God-Man. Dostoevsky on the burden of a world without God. Have you ever felt the weight of a silent, invisible question? A question that sits at the very edge of your consciousness, too big to be asked out loud, too terrifying to be answered? What if the greatest act of courage isn't to believe, but to truly, honestly look into the void and choose? This isn't a story about religion, but about a choice, a cosmic coin flip that Dostoevsky believed we all face. It's the choice between the crushing weight of a world without God and the terrifying freedom of becoming a god ourselves. What is the emotional and psychological price of a world without moral absolutes? What quiet terror are we inheriting with every step we take away from the sacred? This is a story about a silent scream, a choice we make in the dark, and a burden so heavy it could break a man or make him a god. Imagine a different kind of room, this one vast and empty. The walls stretch into a silent, starless blackness. There is no furniture, no flickering candle, no fireplace. There is only a single man standing in the center. He is not a king or a conqueror. He is not a saint or a sinner. He is simply a man who has looked into the final, terrifying void and found nothing. He has concluded that there is no God, no final judge, no divine rule book. He has chosen to step out from under the shadow of a divine authority and stand in the blinding, merciless light of his own moral freedom. He is the God-man Dostoevsky wrote about, not a man who thinks he is God, but a man who has taken on the full, terrifying burden of a world without him. Dostoevsky understood that the greatest threat to a divinely ordained moral order wasn't a philosophical argument, but a simple, chilling act of will. The God-man doesn't deny God's existence as a philosophical exercise. He denies it as a practical necessity to claim absolute freedom. The God-man looks at the world and sees a blank slate. There are no commandments written in stone, no eternal truths to guide him. There is only him, and the terrible responsibility of creating meaning, of defining right and wrong, of becoming the ultimate arbiter of his own destiny. The silent scream is the echo of that moment, the terrifying realization that if there is no God, then everything is permitted. The boundaries are gone, the guardrails are down, and the God-man stands on the precipice, holding a power so immense it could either build a paradise or unleash a nightmare. This is the ultimate expression of Dostoevsky's dark philosophy. He saw that our moral freedom is not just about choosing between good and evil. It is about choosing whether to have a moral framework at all. He feared that in our rush to be free, we would mistake the absence of God for the absence of consequences. He believed that to live in a world without a divine order, without a final moral horizon, is to live with a burden so heavy it would drive most men mad. It's the burden of having to invent a reason to be good, a reason to be kind, a reason to not simply follow our own self-interest to its most brutal and logical conclusion. The God-man is not an atheist. He is a man who has taken on the ultimate, unbearable weight of being his own moral foundation. And what is the price of this freedom? Dostoevsky explores this in the most profound and terrifying ways. The price is a profound, soul-crushing loneliness. The price is the constant, nagging doubt that any morality you create is just a flimsy, arbitrary construct. The price is the silent scream, the unvoiced terror of a soul that has looked into the abyss and found that it is looking back. The reward, if you can call it that, is an absolute, non-negotiable freedom. The freedom to define your own existence, to live and die by your own rules, to be the sole master of your own soul. But Dostoevsky would ask us if that freedom, bought at such a high cost, is truly worth it. He would ask if the terror of that silent scream isn't a greater prison than the gentle, comforting cage of a divinely ordained universe. So as you close your eyes tonight, consider the weight of this choice. Think about the quiet moments when you have questioned the meaning of it all, when you have wondered if there is anything more than the quiet, chaotic silence of the universe. Dostoevsky doesn't offer an easy answer. He simply holds up a mirror and asks us to look at the man in the vast, empty room. He asks us to listen for the silent scream. He asks us to consider the burden we have taken on, the ultimate responsibility we have claimed. And he asks us, in the quietest, most profound whisper, if we are truly strong enough to bear the weight of our own freedom, or if we are just deluding ourselves into thinking we are. This question of God and freedom, of reason and rebellion, brings us to the final and most profound truth of Dostoevsky's philosophy. It's a truth not about grand ideas or cosmic choices, but about the smallest, most fragile, and most powerful thing in the human soul: a single tear. Our final story is not a conclusion, but a beginning. It's an invitation to look at the heart of suffering, to find a profound and terrible kind of beauty in the quietest, most agonizing moments of our lives. Chapter 11. The Terrible Beauty of a Single Tear. Dostoevsky's unsolvable riddle of suffering. Have you ever seen a child cry? Not a tantrum, but a genuine, soul-shaking sob. That single, perfect, terrible tear that tracks a path down their cheek. What if that tear holds the secret to everything? What if all the grand philosophical arguments, all the debates about God and freedom, all the intellectual gymnastics we perform to make sense of the world, are ultimately shattered by the terrible, undeniable weight of a single, innocent tear? Dostoevsky believed that the greatest, most profound, and most unsolvable riddle of human existence lies not in the stars or in the halls of philosophy, but in the quiet, agonizing moment of undeserved suffering. This isn't a story that offers answers, but one that invites you to look into the mystery and be changed forever. Imagine a different scene now, not a room, but a small sunlit field. In the field, a child is playing. The world is a perfect, innocent place. The sun is warm, the grass is soft, and the child's laughter rings out with a pure, uncomplicated joy. But then, an accident, something small, something senseless, a stumble, a fall, a quiet, sudden pain, and then a single, perfect tear. It is not a tear of anger or rebellion. It is not a tear of a frustrated will. It is a tear of pure, undeserved suffering, a small, perfect microcosm of the greater, terrible injustice of the world. Dostoevsky would argue that all the grand philosophical systems of the world, all the attempts to rationalize and explain away the suffering of humanity, shatter against the undeniable, unanswerable weight of that single, innocent tear. This is the heart of Dostoevsky's final, most profound insight into the human soul. He believed that the problem of suffering, especially the suffering of the innocent, is the one argument that reason cannot defeat. He understood that you can build a perfect, logical, self-contained philosophical system that explains away God, that justifies evil as a necessary byproduct of freedom, that sees suffering as a tool for personal growth. But then, you see that single tear, and the whole system crumbles to dust. The tear is a truth that is not intellectual, but emotional. It is a truth that bypasses all our defenses and speaks directly to the soul. It is a reminder that the world is not just an idea to be understood, but a reality to be felt. The terrible beauty of that single tear is that it demands a response. It demands that we look at the suffering of the innocent and not try to explain it away, but to simply bear witness to it. It demands an act of faith, not in a set of doctrines, but in the power of love, of compassion, of human connection in the face of a meaningless and cruel universe. This is Dostoevsky's unsolvable riddle. He doesn't give us a tidy answer. He doesn't tell us why the innocent suffer. He simply presents us with the terrible beauty of the tear and asks us to look, to feel, and to respond. And in that response, he believed, lies the true test of our humanity. So as you drift to sleep tonight, let go of the need for answers. Let go of the need to explain away the pain and the injustice of the world. Instead, just for a moment, let yourself sit with the quiet, profound weight of that single, innocent tear. Dostoevsky would argue that in that moment of silent contemplation, in that surrender to the beautiful, terrible mystery of suffering, we find a kind of peace that is more profound and more authentic than any peace we could ever achieve through logic or reason. We find a peace that is not about understanding, but about love. And in that love, in that silent, compassionate witness, we might just find a more beautiful and more human kind of redemption. Chapter 12. The Secret Alchemy of Suffering. Why your pain might be the path to peace. What if the deepest emotional peace you crave isn't found by running away from your pain, but by walking directly into it? What if the very things that cause you to toss and turn at night, the secret shame, the quiet guilt, the memories you try to push away, are not your enemies, but a kind of sacred, brutal gift? Imagine for a moment a different kind of spiritual journey, not one of light and bliss, but one of darkness and grit, a path paved with suffering, not as a punishment, but as a crucible. Dostoevsky believed that we must pass through this fire to become truly human, to feel a depth of emotion and connection that remains inaccessible to those who flee from their own pain. What if he was right? What if we are all walking away from the very thing that could finally set us free? The peace that we seek might not be in the absence of pain, but in its honest embrace. In the quiet of this night, let's consider this radical idea. Think of Sonia, the young prostitute in Crime and Punishment. By all worldly measures, she is a lost soul, a woman forced into a life of degradation. And yet, she possesses a spiritual light so powerful that it can break through the dark, tormented psyche of a murderer. She doesn't preach or condemn. She simply is. Her faith isn't a comfortable theoretical thing. It's a living, breathing force, forged in the fires of her own suffering. Her capacity for compassion and love is not diminished by her pain. It is, in fact, made more profound by it. She has looked into the abyss of her own life and found, not despair, but a quiet, unwavering hope. Her suffering has become a kind of sacred alchemy, transforming her own shame into a vessel of pure, unconditional love. She has learned a secret that most of us never discover, that we are not defined by our circumstances, but by our response to them. And in that response, in that moment of turning pain into love, a profound peace is born. Raskolnikov, the murderer at the center of the story, is the opposite. He is a man who believes he can escape suffering. He believes he can transcend the moral laws of humanity, that he is a kind of Superman who can commit a terrible crime for a greater good. But the moment he commits the act, the very laws he sought to defy become his prison. The guilt and shame he feels are not just emotions. They are a living, breathing force that consumes him. He is not free. He is a prisoner of his own mind, his own conscience. He cannot escape the suffering that his act has brought upon him. He spends the entire novel trying to outrun it, to rationalize it away, to pretend it doesn't exist. But it follows him, a constant, nagging presence, like a quiet fever that never breaks. It is only when he finally, in the presence of Sonia, confesses his crime and accepts his punishment that he begins to find a kind of redemption, a kind of peace. The suffering he has so desperately tried to avoid becomes his salvation. This is the great paradox that Dostoevsky lays bare for us. We believe that we must escape our pain to find happiness, but he shows us that we must embrace our pain to find a deeper, more meaningful peace. The kind of peace that is not fragile and fleeting, but is forged in the fire of our own experience. He would argue that without suffering, our capacity for empathy is limited. We can intellectualize the pain of others, but we cannot truly feel it. We cannot truly connect with the human condition in all its messy, glorious, and tragic complexity. Our hearts remain armored, our souls remain untouched, and in that untouched state, we are not truly alive. We are merely existing. So, in this quiet hour, let's think about your own pain, not the kind that can be solved with a quick fix, but the deep, existential kind. The kind that makes you question your own worth, your own purpose, your own place in the world. Dostoevsky would say, do not run from it. Do not try to bury it with distractions or drown it with comforts. Instead, turn to face it. Look at it, not with judgment, but with a kind of fierce curiosity. Ask it what it is trying to teach you. Ask it what part of you is being awakened by its presence. This is not a call to masochism. It is a call to radical honesty. It is a call to believe that within your deepest wounds lies a secret wellspring of strength, of compassion, of love. The truth is, we are all wounded. We all carry scars, both visible and invisible. And in Dostoevsky's world, it is in our wounds that we find our greatest connection to each other. It is in our shared vulnerability that we can finally put down our armor and see each other, not as competitors or enemies, but as fellow travelers on a difficult path. The peace that comes from this is not a quiet mind, it is a quiet heart. A heart that has been broken open, not to be destroyed, but to be filled with a kind of love so vast, so profound, that it can hold all the pain and all the joy of the human condition. It is a peace that says, I have been through the fire, and I am still here. I am still capable of love. I am still capable of hope. And this, my friend, is a peace that cannot be taken away. It is a peace that is earned, not given. It is a peace that is forged in the beautiful, terrible crucible of your own life. And as you drift towards sleep, remember, your pain is not a mistake. It is not a flaw. It is a part of your sacred, unique journey. It is a part of your path to peace. As we journey through the quiet darkness of the human soul, we have seen the shadows we cast and the fires we must walk through. But what about the choices we make in that darkness? What about the terrifying freedom to choose our own chains and the secret voice that whispers that there is more to us than we dare to admit? Let's turn now to the ultimate question that haunted Dostoevsky.